Have you finished writing all the scenes for your memoir? And now you're wondering, how do you actually compile them into a readable memoir? How do you know which scenes go where? So in this video, we're going to look at the basic structure of memoir, the 3 acts of memoir. Hello, I'm Brenda. This is Write Your Story, and I love to help you to write your memoir. The 3 acts actually give you the organizational structure for your memoir. Something like this one, where you have the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. Marion Roach Smith herself defines it as the before, the during, the after, and yet someone else has called it the problem, the struggle, the resolution. So let's look at what we need to know in order to actually have this natural flow that covers all those bases. Let's start with Act 1 and the setup. The purpose of Act 1, the first part of your story, is to actually give the setup, to introduce the characters, to tell who you are so that the reader comes to be sympathetic to you as a person, that they identify with you as the main character. This is also the time to bring in all the main characters of your story, if they actually fit in this act, but the chances are they will and they do. So it's a really good time to bring in the main characters of your memoir. It's also the time to set the scene, to let people know where your story is taking place and the background, anything they need to know in order to understand the rest of the story. So let's now look at the before. What does Marion Roach Smith mean when she calls Act 1 the before? It's essentially who you are before the inciting incident. In Act 1, you want to introduce an inciting incident, something that happens in your story at the beginning in those first few chapters that's actually going to be the thread for the rest of the story, and which actually now positions you in a place where you have a problem. This problem is a challenge that you have to grapple with, which plays out in Act 2 and comes to a conclusion in Act 3. We often talk about the climax of your story, but each act has its own climax, and the climax of Act 1 is this inciting incident. You can choose to start your memoir with this inciting incident, or the more traditional place to put it, if you're following more the novel format, which is what I did, is to put it at around 85% of the way through Act 1, and then afterwards you have enough space in Act 1 to actually explain what the problem is that this inciting incident has raised for you. There's some question that has now been posed, and you can even pose the question in your memoir, which is what I did. If you start your memoir with the inciting incident, it's going to be good if you actually come back to that inciting incident at this time of your memoir and let people know what the major problem is before we go into Act 2. Act 2 then is really where we're going to unpack the confrontation, the struggle that this problem and this inciting incident have posed for us. And the during that Marion Roach Smith is referring to in Act 2 of your book is who you are during this process, during these struggles, during this unpacking of this confrontation within yourself, with other people around you, with the situation you find yourself in, how it has forced you to change, perhaps not even voluntarily, but involuntarily you have known that you have had to change, or the pain has got so severe that the only other option is to change. And that is the climax of Act 2. And once we have the climax of Act 2, we now know we're moving into Act 3. The Act 3 is now who we have become after we've been through this whole process, how we've changed, and how that change now plays out in the outcome of our story, because we're going to do things differently. And that is the flow of your memoir in 3 acts. Now, the climax in Act 1 poses a problem and a question that has to be answered in the climax of Act 2. And then the outcome is as a result of that. And the climax in Act 3 is the unfolding of that outcome. And really, when you know you've honed the 3 acts of memoir, when you can describe your book in those 3 acts. So I'm going to explain to you my memoir in 3 acts. Act 1, my mother, with whom I have a close relationship, dies unexpectedly. My problem, unexpectedly, I didn't see it coming. Act 2, this throws me into intense grief and a faith crisis. And at the same time, I now need to start to deal with my alcoholic father, who's playing up in his grief. This is a huge challenge that changes my focus and how I see my father through all the internal dialogue I go through. And in Act 3, I decide to go and spend time with him. That is my memoir in 3 acts. What is your memoir? How can you explain your memoir in 3 acts? When you do, you have the structure, the basic overarching structure of your memoir, and from that, you'll be able to more easily organize which scenes go into which part of your memoir and what function they're serving when they are in that section of your memoir. And now the last thing, how much space do we give for each act? Just using my book as an example, which is really a very traditional way of writing the memoir, I followed a very traditional format. Act 1 is 33% of the book. It gives you time to establish the story. Act 2 is 40% of the book. That is the biggest chunk because you have to deal with internal struggles, external confrontations. And Act 3 is 27% of the book, less than the beginning of the book, because now we have the momentum, we have the pace, and we're now working towards finishing the story. Do let me know if you are able to tell your memoir in 3 acts and put them in the comments below. If you are interested in attending one of my free webinars, then do look in the description below for the link so that I can connect with you and let you know when the next one is. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video as we look at how to write our memoirs.